Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody, for day 3 of Care Week. I am your operations coordinator here at the Center for Relationships, and we are super excited to have you guys. Today we have Brittany. She is going to present something that's super exciting, I think. She's got a lot of good recommendations and connections for us for coming of age for teens, young adults, and parents. So if you have any kids of your own, and that's why you're here, if you have your kids with you, please type in the chat where you're from so we can get to know you a little bit better. For those of you who are not familiar with us, the Center for Relationships is a community counseling and outreach center based in Austin, Texas. We focus on relationship therapy, education, and provide mental health services to individuals, couples, and groups, and provide educational resources just like this webinar. It's our 8th year of Care Week and our 2nd year taking this fully virtual so we can reach people outside of Texas. At the end of the presentation, we're going to show you a little more about how to reach Brittany, how to contact us at the Center for Relationship. And on that note, I would like to present Brittany. She is a LPC-Associate and an LMFT-Associate at the Center for Relationships. She has a bachelor's in psychology and a master's degree in counseling. She works with individuals, children and adolescents, couples, and family systems on a variety of issues, ranging from depression, stress, anxiety, to navigating trauma, life transitions, self-image issues, personality disorders, grief, and spirituality. Brittany is a warm and collaborative, playful, and creative. She is eclectic and person-centered. She is LGBTQIA+ friendly, identity-affirming, and culturally relational, bringing a loving, open, and non-judgmental presence while forming authentic relationships. And outside of counseling, Brittany enjoys being outdoors, traveling, and spending time with her cats and friends. So on that note, Brittany, I will hand it off to you as you present coming of age.
Awesome. Thank you, Lizzie, for that beautiful introduction. As she said, my name is Brittany. I'm an LPC-Associate and LMFT-Associate here at the Center for Relationships. And I'm super excited to be giving and providing information on coming of age and what that looks like for your teens, young adults, and parents, and like highlighting what to expect, highlighting some things that might be helpful in order for some support during this time of transition. And I'll go ahead and get started. So, coming of age. When you think of it, what is coming of age? So it really is a young person's transition from being a child to being an adult. It's the process of growing into adulthood. And so it's that personal growth and change that starts to happen. And so common questions that may arise when thinking of coming age might be, how and when do we become adults? Going to college and then coming home again, and am I still an adult? How do we know ourselves? Who do I hang out with? How do I find my people? How do I find my friends? Who are my friends? When am I an adult? Who am I? What does it mean to be an adult? Where can I find support? Will I be liked? How do I find myself? Do I take a gap year? Do I come out to my parents now? Do I have sex? All these questions might come when thinking of coming of age. And so what do we do with that information? So I want you all to write in the chat box if you can name a movie that's related to coming of age. I listed some movies here, so try not cheat and use the ones that are provided, but can you think of some movies that relate to coming of age? Moxie, yes, love that. She's All That, yes, love that movie. It's a classic. They did a remake on Netflix now. Don't know if it's the same, but yes, great coming of age movie. And then you also have movies like The Perks of Being a Wallflower is a popular one. You have on HBO right now, Euphoria, First Year of College, Sex Education. And you have Juno, The Edge of 17, Easy A, The Breakfast Club, it's a classic. So I'll ask you, what do you think a lot of these movies have in common? And you can put that in the chat box. I know for some of these movies, a lot of them have a theme of friendships. There can be a theme of sex happening in these movies. Really finding oneself is a common theme. Yeah, the confusion of the time and the joy of finding new parts of yourself. Exactly. Yeah, it's that period of dealing with new responsibilities, expectations, your shift in roles that you're playing, the uncertainties of coming of age. Another common theme of these movies can be making friends, keeping friends, and like, what do relationships really look like? And how can I maintain these relationships as I'm evolving into this new person coming of age? Bullies, yes, bullies is huge during that time period too. And so what is society's expectations? What's going on? These societal expectations can leave some young adults feeling pressure to make lifelong decisions before they're ready. And so it's really can add some pressure with what these new roles and responsibilities may be. And so what often determines coming of age? And so big pivotal points might be getting your driver's license, having the ability to see R-rated movies. I know that was a big deal. Entering high school, being able to have your first legal drink, making your own decisions, moving away from home, buying your own things, starting to pay for your own phone bill. That's a big thing. Having your own job, owning a car, having the option and the ability to go to clubs, graduation, going to college, getting your bachelor's degree, getting your master's degree, paying for rent, starting a new career, or even considering marriage. These are often big pivotal points that can determine what coming of age is. And so what has the theme been in the past versus what it is currently? And so there's greater access to post-secondary education. There's a wider range of responsibilities and opportunities, and that increases a person's options and expectation regarding the steps a person should take after finishing high school or college. It's not as clear-cut as it was before. After high school, an individual may enter a specialized school or training, college, pursuing an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or even entering the workforce, and then continuing to go to school and obtain a master's degree or even a doctorate. In the past, a path of young adulthood took after high school was often predetermined by the family and gender expectations, as well as one's own economic status, but this is less often the case today. And so many young adults in the US transition directly from high school to the workforce. The size of this group has decreased in the 20th and the 21st centuries. So that's not as common as it used to be, going directly from high school into the workforce. And so these societal expectations can leave some young adults feeling pressure to make lifelong decisions before they are ready. And so many serious mental health conditions can emerge in the late teen years and the early 20s, furthering complicating an already difficult period of their life. And so as young adults enter new academic settings, new social circles, or new workplace environments, beliefs and values held throughout their childhood may be questioned by others from different backgrounds or challenged by new ideas, because we are exposed to a whole new world. We're seeing things from a new perspective. And so we might be questioning, like, okay, this is how I was raised, but is this really what I still believe in? And so during this time, young adults may often find the support of a therapist to be helpful during the transition from adolescence into adulthood, especially if they experience mental health concerns or other difficulties as they become accustomed to new expectations, roles, and responsibilities. And so what can make transitioning into adulthood so difficult? What makes it so hard? Adulting. So when think of adulting, what emotions stand out to you? So let's go back in time when you were a teenager, growing into adulthood, becoming a young adult. What were some emotions that stood out to you during that time? And you can put that in the chat box. excitement and pressure. Yes, it's an exciting new time. Like, yes, I'm growing up. That's so exciting. But then this pressure is there as well, because it's like, okay, I want to do all the things well. What am I going to do? And then maybe that pressure of following your parents' expectations that they had of you and not letting them down. There can be so many different types of pressure that go into that. Yeah, it's definitely dealing with those new responsibilities and uncertainties all while balancing a social life can be really exhausting, and it can be emotionally draining. But yeah, it's a time of so many different emotions. Like adulting, you might start paying bills, taking care of the home and apartment, performing a job to employee standards. And so you might feel exhausted, you might feel intimidated. And when one fails to meet a responsibility, this can be even more discouraging. And so sometimes young adults may not even know exactly what career they want to pursue or where they want to live or how they want to navigate their independence. And that fear comes with not knowing what's next. And that can scare young people away from that transition into adulthood. Exactly, not knowing how to handle all the emotions. It's a lot of emotions that happen all at once, and it's hard to juggle. And so what is reality? What's happening now? So some of the current trends, many factors indicate the transition from young adulthood to independence, and that takes more time than it did in the past. And so when youth who had completed high school were often considered ready for employment, marriage, there are other aspects of settling into adult life. And so what's been a word that's been used has been boomerang children. And so what is boomerang children? It's late teens and early 20s young adults will move back with their parents after a period of living apart. This has become more common, and it's more common because young adults find it difficult to pay for housing straight out of school. They're forced home to save more money enough to move out. It's hard to get 3 months of rent that you need in order to get an apartment right out of college. And so it takes a little bit more time, and young adults need a little bit more support. And so what really is seen as independence? And so in the US, the role of being a young adult can be finishing school, leaving home, starting work, entering into a serious relationship, and then having children. American families are providing housing, economic, and psychological support for their young people through their 20s and 30s. And so that period is longer these days. And most parents think that they have done something wrong as parents in not preparing their children properly to independence if they return home, which might not be the case, but those are feelings that parents might experience if their child is coming home after school. And taking culture into consideration, independence might be different for everyone. And so, for example, in Japan, unmarried adults from age 25 to 29, 80% of women and 64% of men live at home with their parents. So it's not uncommon for young adults to be at home with their families. And in Italy, parents and children focus on staying and building co-residency, and they don't define that as a problem. So I think it's important to take culture into consideration to know like what is appropriate and what really does define independence for you based on where you come from and who your family is. And as we live in the world that we live in today, with the pandemic has had a huge effect on young people. And so the confinement has had positive and negative effects. It's affected lifestyle, the lifestyle that the young adults have. It's been a struggle to complete studies. A lot of people had to go from school in person to do all of their studies virtually, and that is a big shift. There's a lot of hindrance to constructing your identity and your career. So it's dealing with that uncertainty. You're confronted with disruptions to your personal and professional life. You are in a process of wanting to develop your professional identity and promoting autonomy and responsibility and self-confidence. And with distance learning, some students don't fully get to experience what it really is like to be a student. And it hinders that development of student profession. And some students need housing, and so they're living back with their parents. Young people from the age of 18 to 30, most affected by the loss of social relations, felt exhausted, psychological distress, sadness, and discouragement. And there was a huge delay in graduation in the US. Some young adults lost a career. That opportunity of internship either was missed or delayed because of can't do some things in person, and some things weren't able to be switched over to virtual. And so it was hard for young people to kind of make that shift and reevaluate, okay, like what does my career look like now with what's happening with the pandemic? And so I think it's important to highlight what's really happening in the brain, what's happening psychological from the psychosocial development part of it. And so Erik Erikson uses the stages of psychosocial development to really express what stage your young adult or your teen is in as they're going through this transition into adulthood. And so Erikson referred to the young adult period as intimacy versus isolation in his 8 stages of development, describing it as a period when individuals often begin intimate relationships after developing a sense of identity. And so you can see that identity versus role confusion is kind of where your teenager is sitting, and then as they're going into intimacy versus isolation is as they're guiding themselves into young adulthood. And so a longitudinal study by the National Institute of Mental Health found that a young adult's brain is not fully mature until around 25 years of age. And so while the limbic system, often associated with emotions, motivation, and behavior, undergoes major changes during puberty, the prefrontal cortex keeps maturing for about another 10 years. And so this part of the brain affects how a person controls impulses and develops long-term strategies. And so it's important because it may be helpful when an individual attempts to answer the question, what am I going to do with my life? So this gives you more context on what's happening from the psychosocial development part of it all. And so for my parents, I know I have some parents on this call, on this webinar. So what do you expect through this transition as parents? This is the information that you need. So take some notes. So what is it like parenting adult children? The roles that parents play. Relationship between parents and their children change over the lifespan. As young people move through adolescence into adulthood, the nature of the relationship typically changes, moving from a dependent relationship between a parent and a child to a more equal and mutually supportive relationship. So parents are accepting their son or daughter as no longer a child, but an autonomous individual. The young people learn to see their parent as unique beings and not just parents, like you're not a regular mom, you're a cool mom. Yeah, take pride in that, with their own histories, needs, and shortcomings. The move towards an equal relationship may be difficult for some parents and young adults to achieve. It's not easy, and that's normal for it to take time and for it to take some adjustment. Since more people are living with their parents or are financially dependent on them for a longer period of time than in previous generations, parents need to be mindful of like, okay, what type of financial assistance am I going to be providing? Am I going to be helping support pay bills? Am I going to be helping support pay rent, loans, education fees, tuition, car note, your phone bill, food budget? Like, how long am I going to be doing this? And like, what is my budget going to be in supporting my young adult child during this process? And another role that parents play is that emotional support. There is this in-between period where young people rely on parents at a time when they are considered as an adult in other aspects. So like I mentioned before, what are some things that determine coming of age? That can be legally driving. So like they're doing adulting things, they're able to drink, they're able to make their own life decisions. But how do we have this relationship when we're in this in-between period? And so parents whose 23 to 24-year-old was living at home were significantly more likely to believe that it was their role to provide material aid and to provide advice or guidance, more of a parent-like relationship. And so it takes some time to determine like, what role am I really playing in my adult child's life? And so some common questions that parents ask themselves are these. How do parents of children aged in their mid-20s perceive their parenting role? Like mentioned before, how much financial assistance and emotional support do parents give their young children? Do parents of young men have differing views of their parenting role than parents of young women? Do parents provide more, less, or similar level of support to sons and daughters? Do parents' perceptions and level of support differ according to whether their child is still living at home or has moved out of the home? And so how do we adjust and cope with everyday emotions, events, and obstacles that might come up as we go through this transition of coming of age? These are some obstacles and conflicts that can exist when co-residency with parents and their adult children are in the same household. There may be conflict in communication and interaction style. There might be a lack of understanding. There might be differing habits and lifestyle choices. So for example, differences regarding smoking, recreational drug use, alcohol, or obesity. It also could be differences in kids wanting to hang out with their friends all night and come in late at night. That might be different lifestyle than you as a parent is accustomed to with them coming back from school, for example. There might be conflict in values and beliefs, or even child rearing practices. So your child might have a different religion or political view and ideology than before, since they have gone on their own. They might have new values that they have, and that might be different than the ones that you all were accustomed to in the very beginning as you were growing up. And then there might be differences in household standards or maintenance. For example, your young adult has been off in college on their own for a while, had their own place, might leave dishes around, might leave a cup here and there. And then if they move back home, they're still in that same habit of like, I'm used to living this way. And it might cause a discussion of like, okay, this is not how we do it in the house. And like collaborating, like, okay, what are the expectations? How can we adjust to make life comfortable for all of us? And so here are some ways to approach therapy for your teens, young adults, or even parents. Cognitive behavioral therapy is really popular and really something that can be beneficial and effective when working with young adults and teens. So it's really targeting those negative self-beliefs, addressing the negative life events or the maladaptive behaviors, maybe some of those cycles of negativity. CBT can be helpful with being more self-accepting, revising negative self-beliefs, having more positive beliefs about yourself. And then you can also use reminiscent-based interventions of reflecting back and recovering some of those memories from the past and reflecting on its contents and creating new meaning to what that person has experienced. You can promote positive and adaptive views of self, find a support system for your young adult or teen that has supportive peers, something that can be helpful, as well as art therapy. So painting, sculpture, music, and dance, that can be really effective in session because it won't feel as heavy as just talking about all of the things, but doing something that's experiential in the moment. And it helps that flow of content and flow of relationship building happen more fluidly and authentically as well. And it helps you get in touch with your inner thoughts and feelings. You can also use compassion-based interventions. If you want to know about more self-compassion, Oliver is leading a great webinar, I Want to Believe today, that you might want to hop into to give you some concrete tools on what self-compassion-based interventions could be. And then gratitude-based interventions, coming up next. Gratitude-based interventions can be really helpful as well. So just being mindful of like, what is actually happening in my life? Can I highlight all the good that's happening? What am I grateful for? And it can be the littlest things, but really focusing our attention on that and our energy on that so that we don't dwell on the negatives. And then intrapsychic strategies can also be beneficial as a form of therapy. So you're able to modify the relationship with oneself. Deflection and acceptance strategies. So deflection being refusal to modify either their values or dimensions of identity, and going to more an acceptance lens of increasing one's self-worth. You can also do interpersonal strategies, which include improving relationships with others to cope with threat, social interactions, the ability to negotiate with others, and really finding your sense of belonging. And then intergroup strategies can be helpful as well, because that gives you that group support. You're able to join people that have similar interests as you, values and goals. And so it's easier to relate, and you will feel more comfortable that you're not so alone in this, and that there's others that are feeling similar to how you're feeling as well. And so the good stuff, what can we do? Because yes, we have all the information, but like, what do I do with this information? How can I grow? How can I really have some support during this time of coming of age into helping my young adult go into adulthood, or as a young adult, like, what do I do during this time? And so you have the rite of passage. And so for my young adults, how to best prepare can be having a better and developing a deeper understanding of yourself. And so really highlighting your character strengths, your interests, your skills, and your passions, and really allowing yourself to reflect and allowing yourself to highlight what those are, without the voices of everyone else, because it's really hard to really put attention on yourself when you've heard everyone's interest of what they want for you. And so really reflecting on, like, what is it that I want for myself? What do I like? Who am I? And let's start by addressing our strengths, our skills, and our passions. And what do you love to do? Like, do you love to listen to music? Do you love to dance? You like hang out with your friends? You like fashion? Like, what is it that you love to do? And then what do you wish you knew how to do? So that can give you some direction on, like, okay, what doors can I open? Where can this lead me? What are some things that I've always thought about but never allowed myself to explore? And all of this is about exploring and exploring about the new elements of who you are. And also having a growth mindset. So being open to new opportunities, being open to new avenues that you probably weren't open to before, and just having that mindset of, like, you're always growing and you're always evolving. And the last one being gratitude. And so as a gratitude-based intervention, it could be highlighting 3 good things that happened at the end of the day. Like, what are you grateful for? I'm grateful for getting able to spend 5 minutes with my mom in the morning, or being able to watch the sunrise, being able to go for a walk during the day. Going back to those gratitude-based interventions and really finding what are some of the positives that happened during your day. And this could be something you do in the morning, and this could also be something you do in the evening as a way to decompress and reflect before you lay your head down at night. And so, young adults, ask yourselves, you might be in a period of, like, what is keeping me tied to my parents? All of my friends have moved out, but I don't really feel ready to live on my own yet. And that's okay. But just knowing what's true to you, what feels right for you, and what do you need. Is it all right to have beliefs that are different from those of my parents? So for example, my parents are Christian, but I want to have Catholic practices. And having the ability to explore what you feel like is true to you. They might ask themselves, what are my fears and anxieties about independence? What do I do if I can't succeed on my own? There are those fears and anxieties of disappointment and that pressure of, like, what if I don't achieve the things that I want to achieve? Young adults might ask yourselves, how well do I know myself? How do I discover who I really am, and what do I really want? You might ask, what are my values and goals? I don't know if my values are my own, or if I only hold them because I learned them from my parents. And these aren't easy questions to ask yourselves. So giving yourself some grace as you're asking yourself these questions will be important, but this will help give you some direction on what you want to do to take those next steps. So yes, having that main character energy, having that main character mentality, like, this is your life. This is what you want to do. Put yourself first, and let's see what comes out of that. And so I challenge you, for the young adults, to write a letter to yourself. And in that letter, being able to see, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? How do you feel in the life that you see? I think it's important to address the feelings, like, I feel confident, I feel at peace, I feel motivated in the life that I see, I feel loved, so that you can really connect to that. And then what kind of relationships do you want to have in the life that you see? And then for my parents, this can also be something that you do in writing a letter to your young adult, and, like, what do you see for them? What are your hopes and dreams for them? What do you see as their strengths, and what are you grateful for in your young adult child? So this can be something that everyone can do. And so for my parents, some parenting steps, how to support and be a part of your child's transition into adulthood. So some things that you can do is discuss expectations. So one of the most important things parents can do before an adult child moves back home is to evaluate what you want from this arrangement. Instead of immediately preparing your child's room and filling the refrigerator with food, as a young adult, I do appreciate that from parents, but for your own sake, like, it is important to set those expectations so it's not something that's expected from your young adult child. Understand where they are coming from. Ask your kids what they'd find most helpful. Accept that your adult children can think for themselves, or your adult child can think for themselves. Focus on things you can contribute. Let them make their own decisions. I know it's hard, but you want them to be autonomous and you want them to be their own human. So letting them make their own decisions. So it's the balance of offering advice versus overstepping, being mindful of directives when expressing your own experiences, and then validating them. It's important. Validation is important for them so that they can feel confident in the decisions that they're making. Stay in your lane. I know it's hard, but be mindful of not overstepping. Pay attention to the balance of your interaction. So don't let your part in the relationship slide into all giving or all receiving. Create a friendship with your child. Create a friendship with your children. If they are always taking, what can they do in return? And so here are 8 ways to grow a healthy relationship with your adult child. 1, recognize and respect your differences. There's no time like the present to accept and to celebrate the uniqueness of your child. You may not always agree with their life choices, but as their independence grows, find joy in connecting without conflict. 2, share your wisdom and insight without being critical. So if they sense criticism, they may even shut down completely. And if you're sharing wisdom, do so with grace and sensitivity. The process of learning how they communicate and matching that so that you can meet on the same level. 3 is setting boundaries with adult children. So adult children living at home or living overseas or anything in between, you still need boundaries. For example, you should still go to that yoga class or to the gym and keep your own commitments instead of dropping everything to go get milk or pick up a job application for your child. This prevents resentment on the part of the parent and helps ensure that self-care remains a priority. You need to support your child without getting lost in the process. Then 4, do things you love together. So maybe this is a time to discover new things you both love. So whatever traditions, hobbies, or activities that appeal to you and your adult child, commit to enjoying them together on a regular basis. So this could be like, let's try this new coffee shop. We're a coffee shop date kind of person. Or like, let's try this new shopping store so that we can go shopping together. You can be creative in this, and it might change as you are discovering new things that you both love to do together. And then 5, make room for significant others in their lives. So be open-minded and gracious as you meet this person and find ways to get to know them without being too pushy or critical. This doesn't necessarily mean letting go of an adult child, but giving them the room to grow and learn at their own pace. 6, be a consultant, not a CEO. And so an LMFT from the Bay Area says this phase of parenthood is not about running the company and being in charge of their life as you were when they're dependent, but instead parenting adult children may mean offering expert advice and guidance that adult children can implement. 7, be a sounding board for adult children. And so adult children will not always be asking for advice, but rather just asking for a sounding board. So parents are gonna have to put on your poker face when you hear some things that might make your skin crawl, but it's important for your adult child to know that you're there for them and that they can come to you with whatever's bothering them and feel safe in those conversations with you. 8, make family meetings a regular occurrence. And so regular meetings allow a safe space for siblings and parents to share issues of concern and to process hard things together. So if the wounds of your relationship run deep, there might be some wounds there. There might be some trauma, for example. You may want to seek out a therapist who can help you understand the roots of the hurt and work towards healing. So there may be opportunity to bring your adult child to a session with you so the therapist can mediate an open conversation about these past hurts. And then for parents, it's also important to encourage self-advocacy skills. And so helping teach your kids how to have conversation with other adults is so important. Don't be like me, scared to call and order pizza on the phone and feel terrified and hang up. It's important to practice this with your young adult children or your children as they're becoming young adults. And so, for example, this could be practiced with teachers, bosses, or other professionals such as physicians, bankers, or pharmacists. Role playing is great for this. It's a great way to practice the skill, gives those opportunities for older kids to engage with other adults. It's also important to teach money management. And so it's an important task for parents to begin setting expectations during high school and college, opening and managing a savings and checkings account, start practicing that early. So it does help build their credit and helps teach them proper use of a debit or credit card. It helps with creating a budget, getting a handle on student loan debt, knowing how to handle and have a cell phone plan, auto insurance, health insurance, because when they hit 25, they are no longer on your insurance, they age out of the parents' plan and have to get their own. So it's important to prepare for that and for them to know what to expect in that. And then helping them learn about investments, savings, financial goals for large purchases, and potentially planning for how to save up for retirement. And so that is the presentation on coming of age. But I do want to leave it open if any of you have any questions for me that came up for you as I was presenting, if there's anything you want to know, or if there's any comments, if you are a parent, what it's been like if you do have a teenager that's transitioning into a young adulthood, or just something that you've experienced when you were transitioning into becoming a young adult.
Thank you, Brittany. One of my takeaways while our attendees are getting their thoughts together is the boundaries portion of it. When you mentioned boundaries, it was like, ding, 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 don't stop what you're doing to go drop everything and go get milk for them or something like that. It's very, the parent guilt is real, and that's super important. So I appreciate that for sure.
I love that you said the piece of parent guilt, because it's our instinct to want to always be there, to always provide and be that person to support. But sometimes you have to check in with yourself, like, okay, wait, let me not lose myself in this. So I think just highlighting that parent guilt is really big.
Yeah.
Yes, respecting their independence. Yes, because young adults they have to learn for themselves, and they have to learn what that looks like for them. And we can't, as parents, we can't always hold their hands in that. And it might be hard for us to give them that independence, because that they might make those mistakes, but sometimes they have to learn through those mistakes. And so providing space for that. Well, I want to say thank you for everyone that came, and I hope that you learned a thing or two. And of course, if you have any questions or if you want to contact me, my email is listed at the bottom of this page.
So thank you so much, Brittany. It was awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.